Prospect 1. Los Angeles Dodgers.
Number 1 for the Los Angeles Dodgers, Walker Buehler, Texas Ranger. Nope, Walker Buehler, Los Angeles
Drop
Dodger.
him out.
Yep, he is number 1. Alex Verdugo, number 2. Number 3 on the list, Keibert Ruiz. Number 4, DJ Peters. 5, Starling Heredia. 6, Yusniel Diaz. 7, Yadier Alvarez. 8, Jaron Kendall. 9, Dennis Santana. And 10, Edwin Rios. That is your top 10 for the Dodgers. Well, why are you erring about it?
Jaron Kendall. Is this related to Jason Kendall?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Are you just going to irk every time?
It was going to be too much.
No, I did see Jaron Kendall, though, in the in Instructs. I've told the story. Actually, I don't know if I told you this, Bogman. I'm right at the gate watching. Jaron Kendall is 2 feet from me because he's on the other side of the gate, just kind of getting ready. I think Carlos Rincon was up. And in the Instructs, what's really funny about it is you've got all the managers that like sit outside of the dugout. Like no managers on inside the dugout doing that stuff. Like they're out, they're maybe where I'm at on the outside of the gate, or you've got 3 of the coaches that are inside on chairs right next to the dugout, essentially on the field. And McKendall's right there, and this one coach is just like, he looks at Kendall and he says, "You ever heard of Speedy Gonzalez?" And Kendall doesn't say anything. He's just kind of shaking his head. He's like, "That's you." He's like, "You go." He's like, "You got the light. You go when you need to go." And then sure enough, Kendall, he swatted a single to left. He got on base. He tried to steal, and then he got thrown out. So that was what was funny. But Kendall was a popular college bat in the most recent draft in 2017. A lot of comps to Jacoby Ellsbury, and I think those are correct.
Now I'm going to think of Speedy Gonzalez. Whenever I think of Jaron Kendall, I'm going to think, I steal the base whenever I feel like in my...
Well, in that one, he was a little slowpoke Rodriguez
do.
on that stolen base attempt, though, unfortunately. So, yeah, Jaron Kendall, definitely a top draft pick that people like. And I just point out...
DJ Peters' name wrong.
The what's that?
You said DJ Peters' name wrong. It's DJ Peters.
Pew, pew, pew. I like that. Before we get into this, the one I want to point out that's probably the biggest difference, because I don't know if you would even remember, because last year we only talked about the top 5 when we did these organizational ones. But the biggest differential of any player here, in the episode I did recently where I said, what did I get wrong? I identified Verdugo as someone that I just wasn't correct on from like how good he was. I discounted kind of some of the talent, said, I think he's going to, I don't know if he's ever going to have this stuff and the things. Ends up, he had a killer year. He still is lacking a little bit in the stuff and things, but he definitely proved to be a much better player than what we saw in the Arizona Fall League. But a player on the incorrect of me having them high who kind of tailed down is probably Yadier Alvarez. I doubt Yadier Alvarez really, really high. There were some major, major love coming into this year about him. Longenhagen had kind of put the ace comp on him, but he showed up to extended spring training out of shape. The results never quite there. Not that he had a horrible season. It just did not quite pan out. So I have cooled on him, though I have not let go. He is hovering inside the top 100. But we also heard, I think it was Kyle Glasser, who had, I think I was tweeting with him and said there were reports that some scouts like Dennis Santana over Yadier Alvarez. And Dennis Santana, some believe, is purely going to be a relief arm. So there's just a lot of inaccurate kind of, or there's a lot of disagreement in the Dodgers system. Yeah. Right,
and the Dodgers are especially tough because, look, you got a ton of guys in the top 100 here. You got a bunch.
Yeah, I got 7, actually. 7 guys.
7 dudes in the top 100, but they play for the Dodgers. The Dodgers, we know, number 1 payroll in baseball. So a lot of these guys are going to wind up on different teams. So it's or it's going to take them a little bit longer to come up and make an impact. I will say that I would be higher for this season on the pitchers because of the pitchers that the Dodgers have. Clayton Kershaw got hurt. Hill and Wood have histories. They moved Maeda to the bullpen at one point. And Ryu, I'd like to get 100 innings out of Ryu if I could. So now they have some guys.
So with the Dodgers.
Start.
Yeah.
Right. Kohler started before. They have him, in the bullpen right now. And Singrani can make an emergency start if you needed to. There's guys like that. But I think that I would value those guys over most of the hitters for this season just because they've got so much depth. They pay a lot of money for these guys.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think the Dodgers definitely are comfortable, building their pitching within and then moving some of the positional players out. That's why Alvarez, they're not going to give up on. But, it does take, not to take away your first question, but, the first question resigning around, who is the player that has the most impact? Who's the 2018 impact player? Or even if you wanted to look at it like close, the number one player is Walker Buehler. He's literally the number one prospect. No one's going to disagree with that. He's also the number one guy that you would throw in there. And Dave Roberts said in this offseason, the Walker Buehler relief, that's over. He's back to being a starting pitcher. They did it because people don't remember, Buehler was coming off of Tommy John. This year was like the really first run of going, and that's why he was dominant in the minor leagues. They brought him up to limit his innings as a relief pitcher. He is back to going as a starter this year. Now, the Dodgers don't necessarily, if you just look at their depth chart, Ryu, number 5, I think you mentioned that, Brock Stewart, 6. I think Walker Buehler could win that number 5 spot, but they might want to get him a couple innings, maybe even go a little bit of relief, even though Dave Roberts said not to start the season to limit the innings. But I think he could win a spot in the rotation at worst by like May, but he's just not going to be a full go. But he is definitely the most impactful player.
Are you looking at roster resource?
I'm looking at Roto World right now.
Yeah, I mean roster resource is just a little bit better because they've got Kershaw, Hill, Wood, Maeda, and Ryu. I think that's more realistic.
They have Kershaw, Wood, Hill, Maeda, and Ryu on Roto World too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just Buehler's not even on their list, which is incorrect here because I think Buehler is vying for the number 5 spot for the Dodgers. That's a fact. I mean, honestly, Ryu with his injury problems, he'd be better set being in the bullpen at this point.
Okay.
That's fully what I believe. But
yeah,
Buehler's not the only one, though. He's not the only impact guy for the Dodgers because Verdugo, he was brought up, but the Dodgers are going for it. They've got to try to find a spot, which I just don't think they're going to do because guess what? Jock Peterson, Chris Taylor, and Yasiel Puig. Unless they make a move and don't acquire an outfielder, I don't think they have a spot for Verdugo, but they are adamant that they're not going to move him. So
Verdugo, Buehler this year. Is there anyone else?
I mean,
you can see with significant impact. This guy got a call up and
no significant impact. I'd end it there. I mean, if there were just like massive injuries,
right?
Maybe if DJ Peters had,
and even then,
sometimes
these guys could be. If there's a massive injury, these guys still, I would bet on them being more trade bait than getting time. Next year.
I mean, Yusniel Diaz that would probably be the first option if like Verdugo. Here's the scenario: they'd have to lose let's say Chris Taylor and Puig, and then Verdugo gets hurt, and there's not a free agent option. They probably still make a trade, and then they probably go to Diaz because Yusniel Diaz is he's not great at any of his skill sets. But he's he's an even talent. I saw him multiple times out here. He's got power. He's got some speed, but they're never going to be elite in any category. He's probably a 270, 280 hitter, 15 homers, 10 stolen bases, plays good defense type of guy. So he is capped. But because of that potential, I rank him a little bit higher because I think he can get you value and he's going to secure it. But he's the last option. I would stick Verdugo and Buehler.
Who else is a value, not for this season, but as far as picking in our dynasty drafts?
Okay. I mean, Peters, I like. Starling Heredia, he's like a tank. The dude's a freaking tank. He can steal some bases. He was really great. I only caught him twice this year in Instructs, but in 2017 he hit 325 with 10 stolen bases and 7 homers and only 200 at bats. So I was able to catch a few of those at bats in. It wasn't in the AZL, actually. It was after this, so the Instructs, that actually doesn't count. I really like Heredia. Let's go through this list here of values. Edwin Rios is interesting. He's 23 years old. He was really good throughout the season. I like him. Will Beatty, who was in the fall league, he's a little bit older, but they moved him around a whole bunch. First base, outfield. He's got a pretty good bat. He actually won the, I think it was the Texas League batting title. I think he was the MVP. Yeah, it was the Texas League. He was the MVP. He hit 326 with 15 homers, only struck out 54 times in 438 at-bats. And I kind of like Will Beatty a lot. He might be a sneaky guy. And but we'll go sleepers here in a minute. But as far as value goes, Beatty might sit there. Will Smith, the catcher, not the singer. And let's go with Heredia.
What about sleepers? Because there's a Cespedes here. I mean, is this more family stuff? I do know that isn't there a Cespedes that's Ioannis's cousin or something?
Yeah, he hasn't. I'm not sure if he's ever going to sign. He would be high up my prospect list if he were to, actually make himself available. But he hasn't. I don't know. I actually can't confirm if this is a Cespedes bloodline. I think it's likely Cespedes from the Dominican Republic, right?
Cuba.
Yeah, so then it's not, because Yeson Cespedes is from Azua, Dominican Republic, 19-year-old. Yep, he's been a relief pitcher, and that's why I've got him down this list. But I think, and I'm hoping, is the last couple, or at least 2017, they moved him to play. There's two things here. They moved him in a bullpen role, but guess what? It's also not necessarily a bullpen role, because these guys, the starter might get 2 innings pitched in the AZL. And then the next guy gets 2 innings. And then the next guy gets 2 innings. So I don't read into him getting 0 starts in 2017. But he played 20 games, did have 37 innings pitched. So, it was limited. But he was pretty good. He had a 2.6 ERA. If they move him to a starting pitcher, I think he's a guy that is going to move up their system as well. We're just talking about pitching for a second. Robinson Ortiz, who I saw on Instructs, who I immediately tweeted about, really like him. 17 years old. He had some awesome stuff he was working with. He made a couple of the Reds draft picks, Stuart Fairchild and Jeter Downs, kind of look silly. And I had never heard of Robinson Ortiz till I saw him. So those are Cespedes and Ortiz are massive dynasty guys. We're talking over 500. But other sleepers, Christian Santana, who I really like. He's got a whole bunch of business he has in his swing. He is a third baseman, hit 363 in 2017, 10 homers, no stolen bases. I really like him. And, I'm not going to – he actually belongs more in the value. Yadier Alvarez might still be a value. But I'll go with Christian Santana, Ronnie Brito, and maybe even if you want to take another shot on a pitcher, Aldri Acosta, who was in the DSL. He was a 1.26 ERA in 14 games started over in the DSL. So a couple guys for you to look at. Dodgers are a pretty deep system, and they've got a couple other guys, Carlos Rincon and Johan Mieses, who these dudes have monster power, but they've got massive holes in their swing, just massive holes in their swing. So I don't know if they'll ever put it together.
All right, I think that's enough for Dodger Dan to get it done.
Are you just you just hate your Dodgers? I know you do. I have a thing for DJ Peters, though. I have a man crush on DJ Peters.
DJ Peters.
I'm looking right here. I've got.
By the way, that's going to be a thing. That's going to be like Charlie Blackmon and a guy named DJ LeMahieu.
We need to actually make a full sounder for it. So when it comes up, you have a full sounder for DJ. It'll be the DJ Peters sounder. So last thing I want to just at least say here. The top 8 of the Dodgers, I am very comfortable if someone wanted to be bullish. If you wanted to move Yusniel Diaz below Jaron Kendall, I'm also cool with that. I've got, between Diaz and Kendall, those guys are about 13 spots, those three within 13 spots. Diaz is safer. Kendall is little bit more of a home run play. He also steals more, but he's going to be less power. So, when actually is all said and done, Kendall actually might move over the next couple months. So be on the lookout for that. But the top 8, I'd be pretty bullish on in really any format. Then after that, it's really dependent on the system that you're working with on, do I want Will Smith? Do I want to go get Dustin May, who's a really interesting prospect? He came up at 14 on my list. The Dodgers are very, very heavy starting pitching. I guess you kind of alluded to this when we started. Dodgers are super, super heavy on really good starting pitching prospects. Their positional players are good, but it's not the same talent as their pitching. So you might even see a lot of these guys being used as trade bait. The Heredias and the Jaron Kendalls in the future might end up moving on. But the only other guy we didn't talk about, Bogman, and I just realized this, and we've got to talk about because I know people are going to be concerned about, is Keibert Ruiz, because he is my number 1 fantasy catcher, and he's inside my top 100. You like that name?
I like that name.
Yeah, Keibert Ruiz, 6 foot 200, hit 316 with 8 homers, no stolen bases, only struck out 53 times in 376 plate appearances. I know, dude. And I think unanimously he has become the number 1 catching prospect, assuming that Francisco Mejia is essentially not a catcher anymore, even though he'll qualify. Be aggressive on Keibert Ruiz. I mean, I assume he's going to be a catcher, but he has got a big bat. He could hit for average. And if I was going to take my chances, I mean, if I purely was thinking catcher, I don't know, man. I might even prefer Keibert Ruiz over Francisco Mejia at this point. And until I hear Mejia is officially moved to like second base or something like that, I would be aggressive on Ruiz for sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear you gush about a catcher here.